Hi, I'm Carrie.
And I'm Molly.
And you're listening to the Two Sisters on Adventures podcast. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. Remember that if you want to see any photos or videos from our day on the trail that we're going to talk about today, you can just follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Two Sisters on Adventures, and it's the numeral 2. Don't type out the letters because then you won't be able to find it. Okay. So we last left off at our campsite by the red cinder cone, which we loved. Mm-hmm. We had a nice morning there when we woke up. We found our pre-dug cat holes, which now I'm thinking about it, and I think the third cat hole was someone had to go again. So you can always try digging the cat holes extra, and then right. Sometimes that you try to control a variable, and your body says, you know what? I think I've got more for you. I've got more to give. And then we kind of started our ascent from there. And I just remembered right this second, we found our favorite water source on trail. Remember that one?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness. I don't know exactly where it was, but it reminded me almost of a water source that you might find in the high alpine of like Washington or Oregon, because it kind of had those colorful volcanic rocks in the bottom, and it was so clean and clear, but it was ice cold and it was amazing. And I think that someone had actually kind of given us a tip. Oh, I think those two girls that we spoke to at Red Meadow had given us a tip of, like, there's a spot we saw some campsites by the cinder cone, but there's a really nice water supply spot, which is the last spot you can get water for miles.
So it's a half mile south of the cinder cone camp on the PCT. There's like a little creek, and it was, once again, like Carrie said, the clearest, coldest water, best water on the entire trail. Oh my gosh.
And so it was funny because I just remembered two stories. So one thing was, when we brought our Smart Water bottles with us, we filled them up in Sacramento. And then I just kept, do you remember this? I just kept drinking out of one and then refilling that 1 liter. So I was about 4 days in, and I popped open that 4-day-old water from Sacramento that had been heated in the sun, and I had like sipped some out of it, so it must have been growing some exciting, little colonies of bacteria living and thriving their best lives. And I sipped it, and I like spat it out, because like after you drink enough mountain water, right, city water is just like trash. And so I dumped that all out, and I had to like refill it. But then when we went to the cinder cone, I think we had already refilled that morning, maybe by our campsite.
Yes.
And then we were just topping off because we knew there was going to be 5 or 7 miles with no water sources, a lot of uphill, a lot of exposure to the heat. And we took like one sip of water from that thing, and we were like, no. We dumped out our water bottles so we could fill them to the very brim with that water, because it was so tasty and good.
Yeah.
So FYI though, if you do the 2 water bottle system, definitely drink out of both water bottles, because if you're just going to leave water in one water bottle for days on end, it's not going to taste
Especially
good.
if it's from a city.
It's going to taste really bad. And the other piece of that is, some people will use one water bottle for like dirty water and one water bottle for clean, so they'll fill them and they'll squeeze them in. But Molly and I have, and we mentioned it briefly, we have the Canuck Vecto 2-liter water bag. And we feel like that really has revolutionized water collection for us in a way, because the top part is like a water bladder where you can open it and fold it and seal it, and the water can flow in. So we've collected from literal puddles. Yeah. And you can actually get water in that, versus like a Smart Water bottle, you'd be like doing, when you click plastic to try and fill something, it's like, and like it would have just been impossible to fill. So we actually took an extra 2 liters of water in that as well, because you can carry water in that.
Which I have to, you just reminded me when you talked about using our Canuck to fill from like a puddle. Mm-hmm. We have like these little quotes that we remember over our years of hiking. And so in 2019, we climbed Half Dome with our aunt and uncle, actually, which was so fun.
It was really fun.
And we met this gal, and she must have been a JMT or PCT hiker, and so we had just filled up at like Vernal Falls or something, a stream.
That was like which is a great river. You know?
And so we were like another couple miles up the trail, and there's this gal, and she's like crouched over this mud puddle, like there's like not even water, it's just mud, and we're like, oh, like what are you up to? And she's like, oh, Guthook said this is the last water source. So here her app Guthook, which is now called Far Out, which we love using in the Sierras, and PCT hiking.
Yeah.
It had told her this was her last water source for who knows how long.
Yeah.
So she was filling up from the like dry mud puddle.
And so anytime we see like any sort of like dank, rancid looking water, like in just like a puddle or like bugs are living in it, I'll be like, Good Hook says this is the last water source. And so that's just something that gives us a little laugh all the time. And honestly, if you haven't heard of the Far Out app, that actually is super useful for planning campsites and water carries. And you can see the latest conditions. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You do have to pay to download the map, but once you download it, you have it forever.
And it's funny because we hiked, I think the first time we did.
Yeah, and you know what, guys? I'm going to tell you right now. If you're going to do a little bit of hiking on the Pacific Crest Trail, just purchase and download the whole map at one time. Because I said, I'm going to save money. And so I bought the Washington section. And then the next year I separately bought the Oregon section. And then after that, I separately bought the John Muir Trail portion. And then I was like, trying to find something in the Northern California, and I was like, you know what? I need to just buy the rest of the trail and get it over with, because I did not save myself any. I spent more money that way. I did not save myself money.
So just buy
need the whole map. Yeah. And honestly, even now, sometimes I like to check in and just see like the comments on places we've been and see how people are doing out there. Although not yet, because it's still too snowy.
Exactly. So yes, if you are in the vicinity of the Red Cinder Cone camp, it's a half-mile south. Mm-hmm. Fill your water there.
Oh my gosh.
Amazing. And it must flow pretty much, I think, throughout the year.
Well, yeah, it was September,
a
and
good
it was
flowing little stream. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it was amazing.
Loved it.
So we didn't, I think we filled up one more time, because I think that there was a section of trail, it was like 3 miles up to the 8 miles of that day that there was no water sources at all. So there was like one more stream we were going to cross, and I remember feeling sad that I was going to like pollute my perfect water with another water source, but we had to. So we were going to that stream, and we saw 3 guys. I think they were like kind of breaking camp, or maybe they'd been taking their morning rest.
What? Let's just be real. They were not breaking camp. They were taking their morning rest. It's probably 10 a.m. by the time we see them, because we left at 8:30. Yeah. So they were not breaking camp.
So we like waved at them, and then we were filtering water, and they were coming to the creek to cross on the little footbridge. So we visited with them for a little bit, and I think they first of all just like expressed some concern because they saw we both had our 2 1-liter smart water bottles, and they were like, you guys, there's like a 5-mile stretch, like you don't want to run out of water. And we said, okay, well, we have our 2-liter dirty bag too, so we'll have a total of 6 liters, so I think that should be good. But they were, wanting to make sure we were going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And then I think we just started talking about, they weren't doing the JMT. I think they were going to get off trail at a different lake and maybe hike through there. So we were talking about how we started from Tuolumne Meadows. And there's something like different about my brain that like if I have like this one objective, I want to do that plan, and you have to be flexible in the backcountry. But I like really wanted to start from Yosemite, from Happy Isles. And so I still had that like in my mind, even though I was on the JMT like day 4. So one of the guys was like, oh, well, like if you want to finish the trail, you still can. You just get a bus from the end of the trail, and you just ride that bus all the way back up to Tuolumne. You hop back on the trail, and then you just finish the rest of the trail as a day hike to Yosemite Valley. And I was like,
I mean, I could see Molly's brain like exploding, like, boo, 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 boo. We're gonna finish the whole trail.
So here on day 4, I like got this little inspiration. Burst of energy. The brain was exploding with ideas about how we could finish the trail, and then it became like a recurring conversation the rest of the trail
like, how
about
are we gonna finish this?
How we could finish it. And the guy was like, and that's like such a great idea, because you have to gain so much elevation with like a full pack if you start from Yosemite Valley. But if you just come back to Tuolumne and just go through and finish it in a day hike, then you know what? Like it's all downhill, which P.S. there's uphill, because there always is.
Yeah,
but it's not like 7,000 feet of elevation.
And the reason that we had more uphill is because we did Clouds Rest as an
there
aside,
you go.
Actually.
So,
it would have been barely any uphill.
So a preview is we did end up doing it.
Spoiler!
But we won't tell you how, but we did have this conversation of how could we finish it, and Carrie would be like, maybe we should focus on...
I'd be like, let's just like get to the end of this trail and make sure we can do that, and then... like, sure, let's maybe do that in the future times.
So we filled up our water, and then we started through the dry section. So we gained, I think it was like 3,000 feet of elevation total that day. Mm-hmm. And so we, it was not like a super steep incline, but it was always uphill, and it was dry.
It was exposed.
It was starting to get hot, and I just remember, like, at one point, you know, like, my heart rate was going. I was feeling so tired, and we had passed those guys, and I feel like anytime
you pass someone on the trail, I feel like you never want to stop because you're like, well, I just passed them, and then if they have to pass me, I feel awkward, so I just have to go and go and go.
And they had told us that we were, like, I don't know.
Fast?
They told us we were fast, so then I had this weird thing where I was like, well, I don't want them to see us again, because we have to be fast.
We're so fast.
Which, we call that Nanny Ridge Mode.
Yeah. Well, first of all, eventually I told Molly, you know what, Molly? Let's just stop and rest because you feel a little bit miserable. I feel miserable. And we stopped and rested.
And
then
we
went at like a normal pace after that and felt good.
Yeah.
But later when I was thinking about it, I told Molly, I was like, wow, you really kicked it in a Nanny Ridge mode. Because one of our earlier backpacking trips, like the first year we got into backpacking, we created this complicated point-to-point to go through an area of the Pacific Crest Trail we really wanted to see. And when we hopped on the trail, of course, it's a little later in the morning than we wanted it to be because we had to spend like 2.5 hours shuttling cars all over the place and driving from the Enchantments trailhead actually to get there, remember? So I was like, oh no, we stayed at a Best Western, so we've had like this whole huge day before we even got to the trail.
We did the Enchantments as a day hike, so that's like 20 miles. And then we stayed at a hotel, and then we went and dropped one car off on Highway 12 in Washington, and then took the other one to the other trailhead so we could hike to our other car, and we made it like a 50-mile
so it's like 11:30, I think, when we started our backpack. And of course, Molly was like feeling a little bit worried about like, we gotta get to our campsite before dark and all this kind of stuff, and I think we had 15 miles to go, and so she just is blasting uphill, and I think you go 4,000 feet up. I really think that it's that much, but you're looking at me like,
but Nanny Ridge was like,
no, 1,000, no, it's high. We're not gonna fight in front of you guys. We went up quite a bit in a short amount of distance.
Yeah.
And Molly was just go, 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 go. Her steps are like trying to go uphill, and like I'm like a little tired because I also had like worked night shift and hadn't slept in like days, and I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. But the night before, Molly had been like, I can only let you have 6 hours of sleep or we won't have enough time to get to the trailhead on time. And so it's like, I'm like physically tired and just like trying to push. And like Rachel's going back there because our friend Rachel was with us. And so like we always
Carrie,
just
you said your calves were like numb.
Yeah, my calves were just like so much pain. And it's funny because we just always talk about that now, because I think that I eventually went up to Molly and I was like, you have got to stop. Like, what are we doing right now? We don't need to sprint the first mile that has the most elevation gain that we're gonna do today. And so we always just kind of laugh because anytime we're just like really hurrying for no reason, we're always like, Nanny Ridge mode.
And I'll tell you a secret that I learned about the Sierras, and unfortunately I didn't even realize it until we went to Forester Pass, but you don't have to speed hike up the passes. We decided for Forester, like, let's just take it slow, one step in front of another, because we were kind of nervous because Forester
is the biggest pass on the trail.
13,500,
it's the highest
something
point
like
on
that.
the trail that's not Mount Windy.
And so I just slowed the pace, and I was like, oh my gosh, I felt fine.
Yeah.
So, reminder for people like me.
Sometimes you just want to get to the top so
Yeah.
that you're done with the part where you have to get to the top. But sometimes that makes you a little miserable.
So it's okay to just slow it down, take some rest breaks, and it's fine. So once we got out of Nanny Ridge mode and we rested, we kind of resumed our walking, and it was better. And you get to this point where you're kind of at a ridge as you continue to gain, and you get to look down to like a valley below. And Carrie and I just loved the view of that valley.
You know, it's funny. I think we were like, is this King's Canyon?
Oh, gosh, I think we did, yeah.
I shouldn't even say that.
Yeah, well, oh well.
But we didn't know everything about everything.
Yeah, and as we were gaining and, like, getting a little bit more open views, it was kind of funny because it reminded me almost of Yosemite Valley without, like, the iconic half dome, obviously, or the
but
big
it's like
walls.
amazing
but it's like
granite walls in essence.
And I was like, you know what, Carrie? Like, this could almost be like a Yosemite National Park if they had built a giant road into it. And so it's one of those things that make you feel just really fortunate to be in the backcountry, because you can enjoy some really beautiful sights.
Yeah.
And you have the solitude there as well, where it's not like you're, necessarily sharing it in like the busiest national park in the country.
Yeah.
You get it to just have those views and that solitude in a wilderness feel. That being said, Carrie and I like, we were still kind of surprised because we were not seeing very many people. Like, we'd see just a couple groups, and then that was pretty much it. And we knew the JMT was like a social trail, and we chose September because we didn't want it to be overcrowded, but it was like the total opposite.
It was like the opposite of a social trail.
So we were just like a little bit shocked that it was just strange that there weren't very many people on the trail.
Which then I think we both kind of got in our heads like, we started too late in the year.
Yeah.
We're gonna die.
A little bit. That might have happened just a
Maybe
little.
that was just my brain.
And so when we started out in the morning, for the first couple, I don't know, it just depended, but our first, steps on the trail, we'd always pray out loud, and it would be like when you're on the JMT and you're in the wilderness, all of a sudden you realize how few variables you can control. And I think in our daily life, we have this like semblance of safety that we can control things, and we have a safety net, and you just realize like you can prepare for a lot of situations, but you can't prepare for anything. So it just felt like the right thing to do, like as we walked, to pray both for like our safety, like if we had some like things that we were concerned about, and then like weather, and just like having discernment that we'd make good decisions based on our circumstances. And then, family and friends that had different needs, we'd spend time praying for them. And so one of the things that we prayed for as well was just that when we found people on the trail, that would be an encouragement to them, because I think we really valued like our experience with Matt and Peter the day before, how we just had felt so encouraged by our interaction with them, and how that made a big difference on the current trajectory of our hike. So we were just continuing along, and then finally we made it to like the 8-mile point, and that's where there was a water source. So it was the kind of the heat of the day. We found some trees to hang out in, and then we started
it's funny,
out with
right?
our lunch.
Because there's camps anywhere there's a water source. There's usually campsites. So we had stepped off the trail into this like little area of trees, because finally, thank God, there's shade. And you're sitting at what's a tent site, and there was a lot of ants, actually, I remember. And Molly went and got water, and I got our lunch out. Some tuna on a tortilla, some Teddy Grahams. And we were just kind of sitting there, and you couldn't really see us from the trail. And all of a sudden, this girl walks by, and I was like, "Whoa, a person! I haven't seen one of those in a while." And she actually went and kind of sat over by the river, which it was funny because now you feel extra creepy, because when she walked by, we didn't yell like, "Hello down there." And now it's like, should we just be like really quiet, and then she never knows we're here? Or is it going to be weirder to be like, "I watched you walk by, and like now I still see you over there," It's like, how do you introduce yourself? But Molly, luckily, is a very friendly lady. So she went to get more water, and she kind of stopped and visited with this girl for a little while. And
it's funny because Carrie was like still hanging out in the shade. Yeah. And so she was like kind of like yell conversing, I feel like.
Well, I was laying down, like, I'm going to get up again. I don't think so.
So we were just visiting with this gal. Her name was Sophia. And we learned, I think she started from Tuolumne Meadows as well, and it was just her third day on the trail. Yep. So we learned a little bit about her itinerary, and I think we
kind of both yell converse, because like Molly came back and sat down, and like she's not gonna get up, and we're not gonna get up. And then eventually she was like, "Hey, do you guys mind if I hike with you for a little while?" And I was like, "That's actually kind of fun, like to have a new hiking buddy." And it was such a fun day, because Molly and I don't always talk when we're hiking together, like, and that's fine, honestly. People say, "What do you talk about all the time?" Like, I don't need to talk all the time. Sometimes I'm just walking and looking around and thinking about things, or not really thinking about things.
Sometimes I'm maybe walking uphill, and I'm just literally saying, like, 1, 2, 3, 4,
honestly.
1, 2, 3.
Or, like, I get songs stuck in my head to the rhythm of my feet, and it's like, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and I'm like, I hate this song, but it's like, it matches with the rhythm of my feet so perfectly that I can't do anything about it. So it was actually really fun, because like instead we were kind of visiting. It takes your mind off the work you're doing. She was planning to camp at Lake Virginia, which is known to be a very beautiful lake on the trail that night. Even though those girls told us we'd be followed by a coyote if we stayed there. And so we were planning to stay there. So we just kind of were walking along and visiting. And we've had, different lives. She grew up in New York City, and we grew up in the country on a farm. And we just kind of hiked all day together, and we just really enjoyed it. And it was also kind of fun. So we got to VVR. Wow, you skipped ahead like 20 miles. Yeah. We got to Virginia Lake actually really early in the day. We got there about like 3 p.m. Yeah. But as we were going there were all these other pretty lakes on the way, and there was uphill, and sometimes it was kind of tough, and we met this group of people.
It was like a dad and his son and daughter.
Yes. And they've been on the John Muir Trail. Had they been on the trail for 30 days?
I think so.
Yeah, they'd started south of Mount Whitney. I think Cottonwood Pass, I want to say.
Something like that, yeah.
And so they started from Cottonwood Pass, so further south, but we just kind of stopped to visit with them for a few minutes, and they were like, well, this is like our 30th day on the John Muir Trail, and like, we're just not going to have enough time to finish it. And we were like, 30 days? Oh my goodness. But it was so funny because at this time, we still weren't necessarily planning to stop at VVR. We were like, well, we've had a shower. We've had food.
Our resupplies were Red's Meadow, MTR.
Yeah.
I knew VVR existed, but I mean, Carrie had researched everything.
Yeah, I kind of knew that it was like, VVR was kind of like an iconic spot to stop and make friends, and people really loved it. But I was like, I don't really need to go there. But when we met this family, they were obsessed with VVR. And they stayed there for like 5 days, I want to say.
And the dad, he was like, be careful because, well, those pancakes, they're as big as your head and they're amazing. And everything there is on a tab. So you might look at your bill at the end and be shocked by how much you spent.
But I think that was funny because it kind of reminded me of, I don't know what that story is, but it was like, it reminded me of, like, I swear there's like a mythical story about like, you know, people who like wake up every day and they're like, I'm gonna leave this magical land, and then they're like, no, stay for breakfast, and then they stay the whole day because they'd be like, every day we'd wake up and be like, we're leaving today, and then we'd stay for breakfast, and then it was noon, and then we'd say, we'll just stay the rest of the day.
And I remember thinking like, wow, maybe I need to experience this place, but also,
what if we never leave?
Yeah.
What if we're trapped? It sounds like we'll become trapped. So that was just so fun to visit with them. And once again, the whole concept of hike your own hike. They spent 30 days, I believe. I really think it was 30 days.
It was,
on the John Muir Trail, and they didn't even finish it, but they clearly had such a great time out there and a good experience. And it was like, you know, a father and his kids, and they bonded. And I thought that was really
VVR
awesome. And they spent half their life at VVR. No, they were finally able to get out of that magical lure. And so after talking to them, I kind of was like, you know what? I think that we may as well just go to VVR and see what that's like. And we don't know if we'll ever be on the John Muir Trail again. Yeah. We don't know if we'll ever have an opportunity to go again. Why not just do it?
And I think we felt just like so empowered after our like 3 hours at Red's Meadow.
Yeah, it's like,
that we were like, wow, what would like 24 hours at VVR do for us? Maybe we should consider this.
Yeah, maybe we'll become amazing. But so they were kind of fun to talk to. And then as we were heading up to Virginia Lake, I actually think there was like a little bit of thunder. Do you remember that? It was kind of a little stormy. Yeah. But we were kind of just pushing because we wanted to get there early in the day. We wanted to be able to take it in.
It's one of those, like, I get like stressed out a little about campsites.
Yeah. So we have lived in Oregon. Yeah. And if you backpack in Oregon or Washington, on a summer weekend, you should be a little stressed out about campsites because there's a lot of people who want to recreate and enjoy the outdoors, which is awesome. But sometimes campsites fill up and then you're like, now what do I do?
Yeah, exactly. So I was thinking about like Virginia and how it is a pretty like popular spot to camp. And so I feel like that also was contributing to like a Nanny Ridge Mode tendency.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to like make sure we could actually get a campsite.
Yeah.
So we ended up getting there at 3 and finding a nice spot to pitch a tent. And it was kind of...
This was by far the earliest we stopped on the trail.
Yeah. Well, it almost felt like if you were going to stay at a hotel and like... I don't know. Our family, we'd always, like, check into hotels so late because we'd be on, like, road trips and stuff, and we'd get there at 10. It feels like when you check into a hotel and you're like, wow,
the room's
like,
not ready yet.
What am I supposed to do with myself?
Yeah.
So it was funny because once we got our tents pitched, we were thinking... We have so much time for activities. Mm-hmm. We can swim, we can draw, we can, I don't even know what we can do, make dessert, and we like did nothing.
Yeah, we just honestly sat and we visited there, and I just think it's hilarious to look back on because Molly wrote in her journal, like, it was so nice to talk to Sophia because finally we met a person who didn't know all her stories. And it's just funny because I'm like, well, she knows them all now and she's heard them all like 3 to 6 times probably. But it was nice for that brief period of time where we could tell her all her stories.
And they were news stories.
Yeah.
And I did take a dip in Lake Virginia and it was, unfortunately, it had started to cool off. So it was a little bit, well, it felt refreshing. And then we just like sat in the sun because it was like a nice temperature to just enjoy the sun and just visit about our lives and like different.
And we always kind of laugh at ourselves too because we've not met a ton of people from like New York City.
Yeah.
And I feel like she'd be like, I'm from New York City. And we'd be like, yes, so you're from the state of New York. but not in the city. And she'd be like, no, the city. And we'd be like, of course. So you were born outside of the city and then you moved to the city. She'd be like, I was born and raised in the city. Okay. But you were living elsewhere most of your life and spending all your time elsewhere, but you are in the city occasionally from time. And it was just like funny. I'm like, looking back, I'm like, why did we have to ask her so many times?
Finally, I think she was like, because we were like, an apartment. So you live in an apartment. Yeah. And she was finally like, so you live in a house? And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I guess it's not like it is a city of millions of people. Maybe there are people there who are born and raised there.
Exactly.
Who live in an apartment.
And I think one of the most interesting stories that we learned was that when Sophia was younger, she actually saw the airplane that Captain Sully landed in the Hudson River. Yeah. It flew past her window.
Yeah. So we were like amazed by everything. We'd be like, and that was when during your time visiting the city because you weren't from there because you lived somewhere else before that, and during that and all the other times that you lived elsewhere because no one's from New York City. So anyway, I just thought that was a really cool moment on the trail though, to meet someone and like actually enjoy hiking with them, and we had similar paces where we were similar heights, but it was kind of funny too because she was planning to do the trail faster than we were planning to do the trail, and so that night, it's like you've had this wonderful time. I wrote in my journal like, wow, it feels like we're old friends, like we've known each other forever, and it's kind of like you're just like, well, nice meeting you, and
have a good life.
You're gonna leave at 5 a.m. and I can tell you right now, we are not going to be leaving at 5 a.m.
We're going to be lucky if we leave by 8:30.
Yeah, if we leave by 8:30, we're going to be feeling good about ourselves. So we will not be seeing you in the morning.
And we did I think at that point, we had kind of decided we were going to stay at VVR. Mm-hmm. And we said, well, if you're feeling like you want to stop at VVR, maybe we'll see you there. But we didn't really expect to see her again after that. But it was kind of funny because just thinking about like hoping to be an encouragement to people, it turned out I think that our prayer was answered, but in a way we were encouraged by it.
Yeah, I feel like we were maybe more encouraged.
It brightened up our day. It was just something a little bit different, and we knew like, okay, we're not the only people on this trail. Yeah,
there are other people going southbound.
Because we'd really only met northbound people, and finally we'd met someone going southbound, and so we just finally felt like we weren't alone.
I think she really was the first person we met who was
going
right. southbound. Yeah. Everyone else was going northbound.
Matt and Peter were technically doing a loop. The high road.
Yeah, Matt and Peter obviously were just amazing, so even they could do anything. But they could have started in November and been fine.
But no, it was an encouragement to us, and it just kind of like was a fun trail character, I guess, that we got to meet.
Yeah. So one of those new moments that we had at Lake Virginia was we finally decided to break into our Huel meals. And thinking about it now, I'm like, why didn't we eat them prior to arriving at Lake Virginia? Why didn't we eat them before Red's Meadow?
I actually know the answer. So I think we didn't even bring a Huel meal because we knew we only had a couple days before our resupply. And one of the reasons we like the Huel ones is because we repackaged them into Ziploc bags, and they fit really nicely in the beer can.
So we had space.
So we brought like the backpacker's pantry, Mountain House.
We brought the peak
at the beginning.
Do you remember that?
Oh, that was the
peak refuel
with
that's the good stuff.
What was it? Broccoli, cheese and broccoli. I cried.
Oh.
That was a little later.
You cried later.
Yeah,
but we had 2 of them, I think. So
anyway, so
we brought the really good stuff that takes up more space, because one thing that we did is we repackaged them into Ziploc baggies, and then we just boiled our water and put it in the Ziploc baggie.
And if you get the Ziploc brand, you can do it. Yeah. And at that time, how did we heat it? We didn't have anything.
I think we were like, we'll just put it in a hat. Later days at VVR, we actually found a rehydration pouch that someone had left in a hiker supply box. I think they might have made it themselves. It looked like a mailing pouch that they just put duct tape in. But we now have that forever, so thank you, random person.
So it was our first time trying the Huel meal, though.
And this was the only night on trail we ate one of the mini desserts that I made for us, actually. It was a coconut vanilla pudding, remember? And it was so good.
And Carrie, you had to shake the bag for like 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm,
and there was a hole in the bag.
There was.
So we learned that once, I think it was the heat of the day and maybe the altitude, but the bags we started having a lot of bags that ripped or burst. Yes. And Carrie and I, we love creamer and coffee, and I've actually gotten to the point now that from drinking coffee black on the trail, I drink my coffee black all the time because it reminds me of the trail.
Yeah.
And also because I kind of like it now. Mm-hmm. But we used to do this thing where we'd be a little bougie and we'd bring like the little creamer packets where you tear off the top.
One per day.
And so
that was like our luxury item.
In the Sierras, we actually had creamer packets
like
just
exploding,
bursting. I think that you had to clean out the beer can at Red's Meadow.
Oh yeah, I did. I was pretty mad about that actually. Which we like lucked out in a way because we had them inside other Ziploc baggies. But then the Ziploc baggie that they were in had a hole, And so it was kind of like this whole mess. So we made our Huel meal, and that was the best one we had because I think we had actually more or less the right ratio of water. It didn't need very much. And it was the noodles. It was the...
I think it was something pasta.
It was Cajun pasta.
Yes, it was tasty.
We only ate that one time. I'm not sure why. I don't know. I think we kept saying, like, we'll save this one for another day when we want something really good. And then we never got to that day. But we had the Cajun pasta, and then we had our little dessert, and it was actually really good. So that was kind of fun while the sun set. And that was also a pretty sunset.
The night that Carrie and I decided, so we have our own bowls because we make oatmeal in the morning. And so we like spooned the Huel into the individual bowls, and then afterwards you had to clean it out and like, it was really... pack out our garbage.
Yep.
And I think that was the night we decided, we're going to eat out of the same bag.
Yeah,
like, we're not going to do this like Cajun pasta in our bowl, wipe it out with a paper towel, and then oatmeal in the morning.
The other thing is, in the morning when you make your oatmeal, it's like Cajun pasta, like a hint of Cajun pasta oatmeal. It's not very good. It was pretty bad, actually.
So we ate our Huel meal, and so once again, I think we would need like 24 ounces to rehydrate it, and we liked it because we could package more calories. So like we would split a backpacker's pantry. So it'd be like, on a good day, 400 calories per person for our dinner. And then you'd have to eat other things like a dessert to make up more calories. Yeah. So with the Huel meals, we could make it 600 calories per serving, but we needed to put more water in it. So that was the beginning of all the brick meals.
Yeah. And I do have to say, somebody asked me this question, but we're saying Huel, and that's Huel.
Like
and
fuel,
it's like fuel, but it's healthy fuel, so it's Huel.
Yeah.
But it's not Fuel because somebody found fuel meals and they're apparently really expensive. So I don't want anyone to be buying fuel meals when I'm not recommending them. I don't know anything about them. It's Huel meals.
Yeah. So we had like a really nice dinner. We ate our pudding. We watched the sunset.
Oh my goodness. And you know what? That was a horrible place to have to find a cat hole. Do you remember?
Wow.
It was so rocky there. And it's so close to water.
Yeah.
You don't ever want to you don't ever want to drop a deuce close to water.
Yeah.
And so we were like walking all over, and then it's kind of like that area where it's like bare and
there's like topsoil that's like 5 inches deep and then rock underneath it.
And then you keep running into places you're like, oh shoot, there's actually like a tributary there, and there's one there.
Yep.
And then we found one, and then I'm like using the bathroom, but of course there's like no cover, but I'm like, well, it's the darkness of night. And then there's someone walking down the trail, which like, was I close to the trail? No, but if someone turned their head, they definitely could have seen me. Like I'm not like a mile from the trail.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I guess I'm just gonna like crouch here and not move, and then like your legs get like shaky because you're just like crouching there for so long. But other than that, I would say Lake Virginia is actually a really, really nice place to camp. There's a lot of campsites, and
I think we met a nice gal when we were first walking out to Lake Virginia, and I don't even remember what she told us. She told us something though.
Well, I feel like she was telling us for some reason about how at Mount Whitney a lot of people leave their wag bags.
Yeah. That's so funny.
I'm like, why were we talking about that? I don't feel like we brought it up.
No,
but
she was like, it's littered with wag bags.
I'm like, okay. But I think that she heard you being like, where can we find a campsite? And the lady was like, oh, there's so many campsites.
Yeah.
So I think there was a second.
Yeah, side note, there are a lot of campsites at Lake Virginia. So
and if you're doing it in September, you will probably for sure absolutely 100% be just fine.
Exactly.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Two Sisters on Adventures podcast. And remember, if you want to see any photos or videos from our podcast, you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at @2. But it's called Two Sisters on Adventures. Thanks so much for listening.
Bye.